Hey, hey, what's up? I This is the last day of 2022, and anyway, I've been thinking a lot. Think about identity a lot, and I've been reading a lot about being transgender. Of course, that's a major topic. Uh, I would say in the last 5 years or so, it seems like an explosion, particularly in my field of psychotherapy. Um, but and I, as a guide, I've been reading the works of, is it Kathleen Stock, uh, Dr. Deborah So, Abigail. I forgot the woman's name. And then there's oh jeez, uh, let's see. There's Material Girls. Then there's Trans, Kathleen Stock, Helen So. Oh no, Helen Joyce, Deborah So, and Abigail something. And so I thought, now males and females, right, are in many ways very different in terms of our, and this is not a political perspective. I mean, my understanding is, I believe, what males have XY chromosomes and females have XX chromosomes. So we're different even on a cellular level. Meanwhile, in terms of race, right, which is the topic I've been, I don't want to say obsessed with, but I certainly have been very focused on since I was about 4, 5 years old. Um, People have tried to, and I'd say especially people of color have tried to become more like the dominant uh, um, white, lighter, uh, you know, majority, which has now become a minority. But anyway, so for example, yesterday I was talking to a kid and he was telling me how he was born when Michael Jackson died. And then I just thought again about Michael Jackson. Is a guy who, even though I know he denied it, um, he appeared to have bleached himself. He certainly cut his nose off almost completely. And, it, you know, straighten his hair. And then you look at the fact that, for example, Chris Rock had the I guess it's a documentary, Good Hair. And I just was looking at this book. It's kind of interesting. Destruction of the European Jews by Raoul Hilberg, who's considered the father of Holocaust studies. He was saying that I forgot the name of it, but there were people like they were who they actually identified as a Jew, and the process that they went through, and it sounded very similar to African Americans, like who's an actual African American, and the one drop rule and so forth. And so, for many people, it's beneficial to not identify as your ethnicity of origin if you can, right? So my mother looked like a white woman, and she really resented that, to be told that. But for example, where she's from, New Orleans, she they had something called Passa Blanche, where, and it meant quite a bit, because if you could uh, pass, you could get all of the privileges that a white person enjoys. Uh, you know, my Uncle Joe, for example, he was a bricklayer. He looked completely white. Would he have been able to join unions in New Orleans or Philadelphia had he been perceived as black. Um, you know, and then if you look again at Michael Jackson, there obviously does seem to be a point where he appears to be a black person, and then he looks like the kid said to me yesterday, he's like, he died looking like a white woman. So, and then I am working on becoming a registered play therapist, and all of the meetings are on Zoom, and half of the therapists I'm training with, studying with, are from India, or in it, not from India, they're in India, and one of the psychologists, I believe she's in Bombay, maybe, she was saying, she was talking about skin color, and I was totally unfamiliar with. I mean, I knew there was a caste system. I didn't know that was necessarily, uh, correlated with skin pigmentation. But I don't know why I'd be surprised. And I think you see this everywhere. Like, I imagine with Latinos, uh, with Asians. Well, Indians are Asians, and certainly in my culture, African American culture. Um, when I was growing up, the concept of good hair, and then my mother used to say back in New Orleans, they had these parties where they would have like a brown bag and then a comb at the entrance. And then if you could not get the comb through your hair, and if you were darker than the paper bag, you could not get into the party. And then, so I guess the whole point is, to me, the concept of being trans-ethnic, and is a real thing. Like, if that really occurs, we don't call it that, but people, for example, Dr. Kathleen Stock. I always get it confused whether her name is Scott or Stock. It's Stock, Kathleen Stock. She said she thinks that, and she's writing from it. She herself is, I believe she's she certainly describes herself as a progressive. Happens to be a lesbian philosopher, and she lost her job. I think she felt so browbeaten that she just quit at the University of Sussex. Anyway, so she's saying that she thinks a lot of girls, in her opinion, want to sort of opt out of being females. They want to opt out of being women because they feel that our society, well, she's in England. I think she's now in the United States, but society in general, with like OnlyFans and porn and music videos, or corporate culture or whatever it is, they objectify the female body, and it's a commodity, and they rather not be a part of this. And it sort of correlates, right? Because maybe it's not the case today, but it certainly, like I said, would be beneficial if you're white in this society, and if you can pass, quote unquote, for white, then why not? And then there's people who actually, like Michael Jackson is probably the most extreme case, but like bleaching, skin bleaching, hair straightening, of course. And I remember somebody told me that I Puerto Rican said I had a Negro nose. I look Puerto Rican, but I have a Negro nose. I have kind of like bigger lips and so forth, but I have the good hair. And it turns out, quote unquote, good hair. I have another little video on how like good hair falls out. My hairline used to be like right there, So that shows you how good it is. But anyway, and then of course there are white people who will try to co-opt, or maybe they're not even really conscientiously doing it. I don't know, but they just take on black, mannerisms, or and you're very familiar with this, or like an Eminem or somebody like that, or uh, some might say Elvis. Um, I mean, we're all the same people, frankly. Actually, for me, there are no race is a social construct, and I don't mean to be offensive, but I do believe that sex is real. I mean, like we really do have like different bodies, but race has collapsed. It's not a real concept. So to me, to be quote unquote trans ethnic is very is it's actually real, because you can actually. I mean, to me, like in other words, there's no difference between being white or looking white. Because if you look white, then in what sense are you not white? And if that makes any sense, I'd like to kind of flesh that idea out. But I've noticed, like with many different cultures, like Italians, they sort of want to Anglo make approach, you know, WASP type of, or what I want to say, Anglo-Saxon type of uh, culture. I don't know if they do this anymore, but Jews, people from different ethnic communities, Americanize their names. You see that all the time. I mean, there's countless examples. Like John Stewart, for example, take him as one example. I mean, it's just endless. But yeah, and I mean, especially for African Americans, because you're, it, I mean, if you could, even during like slavery times, right? The distinction between the house Negro and the field Negro, it made a huge difference in terms of the quality of your life. I certainly would like to explore this further. Thank you.